Good morning and welcome to the latest episode of the Kings of Anglia podcast. It's me, Stuart Watson, in the host chair. Bit unusual, but we're here to talk boxing again. And that means that Mark Heath is our resident expert and he leaves me to ask the questions. He does the answering. Ross Hall's here to support us as well because the three of us were there at Portman Road on Saturday night. A special night, I think, gentlemen, wasn't it? I'm going to throw to you first, Mark, because the first thing I want to know is, how's your voice? It was very hoarse when we left in the early hours.
Yeah, I've just about recovered, Stu, if I'm honest. It was, you can't fail but get involved in watching the boxing, especially when, Fabio is someone I've followed for a long time. So you feel personally invested. And clearly for a lot of that fight, pretty much every minute of that fight, it wasn't going his way. So I was vocally getting involved. And then when the big finish came, I jumped into the air, swore a lot, and then realised that my voice was going, which obviously then made the rest of the evening a bit of a challenge in terms of speaking to people. But it was great. I've just about recovered. I think we left the ground at about 1 a.m. We were the last people out the ground with our old friend Andy Warren. Had to find a way to release us from the ground. I got home. I did some more writing. I watched the highlights a lot. I drank a couple of whiskies. Went to bed at 4. Up again at 8 yesterday morning. Put together the big fight supplement, which is in the paper today. 8 pages. Go and get it. And now we're here. And I'm still riding a little bit of a crest of the wave of the adrenaline, the high, because it was a sensational event, special night. And it's the sort of thing that, again, as I said, Fab lives in a movie. You saw that in a movie, you would say that's nonsense. That would never happen. He was absolutely getting his ass handed to him. But then he pulls it out of the bag and it becomes the dream. The movie continues.
Ross, you were there ringside. You were closer than us. You were closer than pretty much everyone there on the night, bar the boxers and the referee himself, leaning on the edge of the ring, taking your snappy snaps. How was it for you, my friend?
It was incredible, yeah. It felt weird turning up to Portman Road and not taking pictures of footballers. I was taking, pictures of, very toned, obviously footballers are toned as well, but very muscly boxers. And incredible. I did touch the canvas multiple times because that's what you got to do. But also, when you want to try to get a nice angle, you have to really get in the ring and sort of make sure, obviously not get in the way. And funny enough, my lens cap actually fell in the ring at one stage, and luckily enough, the photographer got rid of it. So I was able to, it didn't roll into the ring because apparently the photographer next to me said that's happened to him before, and the referees had to kick it. But no, incredible night. And the rain didn't dampen the mood because it was homecoming for Fab, and what a way to end it. But yeah, can't wait to chat with you boys about an incredible night, which hopefully we'll have another one.
Oh God, Ross, that would have been peak Ross Halls if you'd have managed to spoil the Fabio Wardley fight by making him slip over on a rogue lens.
On a lens cap. Can you imagine? Fab does his ankle.
Sorry.
Yeah, you mentioned our old friend Andy Warren, who was kind of sort of 90 degrees across from us, part of the sort of watching Ipswich Town party. We were exchanging sort of slightly giddy text messages just before the fight. Daring each other to run on and get in the ring, just have a little tear up minutes before. Don't know how that would have gone down. Probably not well amongst the organisers. For the record, I would have won, and he can't convince me otherwise. Right, let's start breaking it all down then. As an event, as a fight, we'll build up to the crescendo of the evening. But the evening itself, the event, how it was put on as a stadium. Mark, you said you've covered many fight sports as a journalist. You've been there as a fan over the years, but this was your first taste of a stadium fight. How do you feel it went down?
I thought it was great. I'll be honest, you. And we got there. I mean, I will say this, and it'd be interested to get your take on this, you boys, because obviously you cover Premier League football and Championship football. Fight sports covering an event is like the Wild West. There are very strict rules attached to covering football, where you can go, who you can talk to, what you're allowed, that kind of stuff. With fight events and fight sports generally in the build-up, as you've both seen, it's, there are no rules pretty much. It's every man for himself. YouTubers all over the place doing what they want. So in terms of the covering it, I loved it because I love that being able to do, essentially what you want. And we'll come on to what you were doing, Stu, in terms of stuff that if you tried in the Premier League, you'd get shot, literally shot, if you tried to do what you were doing on fight night. But the event itself, I mean, the stadium looked great. I thought the setup was fantastic. I did have a little bit of a sinking feeling when the rains first started coming, because they were heavy and persistent. And both from a work point of view, that made it clearly difficult because our laptops, we couldn't use them. Rossi was lucky enough to be under the ring canopy, so the rain wasn't a problem for him. The TalkSport guys in front of us were all literally under a tarpaulin, weren't they, Stu, at the start? They're literally hiding under this tarpaulin. And I did think, 6 years in the making, this dream event. It's June and it's going to rain all the time, and it's going to, put people off coming. Clearly because of the rain at the start, that there weren't a lot of people sitting in the stand. Normally at a boxing event you wouldn't have that many people anyway for the undercard, because people only tend to drift in towards the start of the main card. But I did have a bit of a sinking feeling. But then, Stu, and the DJ started dropping the "Why Does It Always Rain on Me" and Umbrella and all that kind of stuff, it started to become fun. Like there was that classic kind of British stiff upper lip approach to things, and people wearing these cheap plastic ponchos. People that have spent 300, 400 quid on seats in these shitty little ponchos. But everyone's, I think, then got into the kind of spirit of it, and it was like, if anything, it felt like it added to it. It made it more memorable. And then as we got towards the main event, the stadium was full, and the atmosphere was fantastic, wasn't it? McKenna walks in, he gets serenaded to his seat. We've got Super Kieran McKenna singing the blues. Obviously, you have to have Sweet Caroline as well, which I know Hutchie would have loved. And by the time Fab walked out, it was electrifying, wasn't it? That walkout was sensational. So as an event, I think it was brilliant.
Yeah, they had fighters obviously sort of were in various dressing rooms down by the tunnel. When they came out, there was that big sort of electronic board with their names and faces up in lights. Sort of a snazzy long ring walk that had sort of various LED lighting that were going off. We had a light show with the floodlights. So they added all the razzmatazz, didn't they? I would love to know how many pints were sold that evening.
The fan zone was absolutely rammed, wasn't it?
So I'm told. Yeah, I didn't manage to get out there, but I believe they put on sort of extra marquees, and I've seen reports that some areas of the ground ran out of beer at different stages. I'm sure everybody's experience was slightly different in terms of the logistics and wait times and all that sort of stuff. But to our eye, sort of in the middle of it, quite literally, we were very privileged to be only sort of a few rows back, weren't we? We were the sort of front row of the written media, which was just uncovered. We weren't quite in that sort of
on the edge,
covered area of the ring, which, as you say, meant sort of the laptops had to kind of keep going in and out of storage. Made you were sort of live updating on your phone at times. That was about the best we could manage. So from our point of view, it was, like you say, the openness of it was great, and I think more importantly from sort of the paying punters' point of view, everyone seemed to have a really good time, embraced the rain, and it built and built, and the atmosphere by the time of that ring walk was incredible, wasn't it, Ross?
Yeah, it was. And I will admit, this is probably the first time that I'm actually undercover. Normally, you guys are the one undercover in
the other way around, isn't it?
football matches. So it's nice, just like, I was looking over to you guys and just going, ha. No, I wasn't really. I was just pleased. I was undercover because obviously my camera's got to make sure to look after them. But no, I remember when I arrived about 4:00, and I remember when my first sort of walking up the steps and just seeing the stage and everything, I just went, wow, like this is incredible. Like, you'll sort of watch at home, don't you? You watch boxing events and you just go think that's incredible. But to be there in the flesh, and then, obviously I've got my wristband, I've got my ringside accreditation. And at first I was sort of like a little bit, can I really go there? Like, am I really allowed there? And then when the guy just opened the thing for me, he went, yeah, go ahead, mate. And I was like, oh. I kept asking every time I asked the steward, is that all right? And he went, yeah, no problem. And I was just when I was there,
to be there, Ross.
I know, but it just feels weird because obviously it's not a regular thing. Like, obviously I'm regular pitch side now at football matches, but just being there, and I remember just standing there thinking, bloody hell, how has this happened? And yeah, it was just an incredible event, and I bumped into a few people I knew as well in the in the different seats and stuff, and they're wearing those ponchos, which was hilarious. There's one girl I know that she actually stole one of the stewards' umbrellas because I don't think you could actually bring umbrellas into the ground, but one of the stewards had it, so hopefully I can get him in trouble. But yeah, an incredible event, and just from the undercard to the main event, it was just great just to be there. I made sure to take pictures of every event, just every boxing fight, because I just thought this is a once in a lifetime sort of opportunity. Hopefully, I can do it again. I'm actually now, Heath, I've got a buzz of boxing. I want to just cover all boxing now.
Yeah.
So yeah, just incredible, man.
Just on that note, Stu, I got a message sent on Instagram from a football fan, town fan, just feedback on the night as a fan, and he said the atmosphere was incredible. This is George Bradley, by the way. Fan zone was better than at the football. Light show, music, camera work, all very, very, very good. Should give the team at Portman Road some good ideas about production. So from a fan's point of view, he clearly had a very good night, and I haven't spoken to anyone who was there that didn't enjoy themselves, despite the weather, despite whatever else was going on. I think everyone who was there, you can't fail to be moved by. There's something raw, visceral, that ties into the kind of very basest emotions. Big fight. You don't get that kind of electricity around any other event, for me anyway. And I think that translated. And I think a lot of people are at the boxing for the first time, and I think they bloody loved it.
Yeah, I think most people sort of embraced it for what it was, a historic moment, something different. Off the back of a disappointing season for Ipswich Town football-wise, they sort of embraced it as maybe a chance to see a win, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
Let's be real, they probably treated it as a bit of a night out. I think there was probably a bit more drinking going on than there would be for your average football match, and rightly so. And it was party time by the time people sort of filtered into the stadium. I think we believe the attendance was close to 20,000 in and around that number. It's only the south stand that was closed, and a little bit of each of the side stands up that end. But the rest of it didn't look like there was many empty seats at all, did there? So yeah, by the time we had Sweet Caroline and all the build up, everyone was in sing-song mode and loving it. On the atmosphere front, I'm going to give a shout out to the Cobbold stand. Not normally the noisiest bunch over there, but they were the ones that seemed to be getting the chants started to my ear throughout most of the night, and that was great. And plenty of chanting. It was great.
Yeah, it's just as I say, it was a special atmosphere. Clearly, when you have an event at a football stadium, especially when it's a home boxer with an affiliation to a football team, you'd expect to see get the chanting and all that kind of stuff. But the way that the night started with the rain, and in my heart, I was like, oh no, this is going to be a disaster. But then it just built. For me, there's a point in the evening, as I say, when it sort of turned and it became fun and it became special, and then it just built and built and built and built and built as more and more people came in, and the atmosphere started to lift and lift and lift. It's up there. I'm going to remember that for a long time.
There were genuine fears going into this, wasn't there?
Yeah.
We talked about this is intrinsically linked to Ipswich Town. It's at the home of the football team. A lot of the people there are Ipswich Town fans. There was a feeling that, oh no, is this going to be typical that after the season that we've just had, one home win all year, that is quite literally going to end on a damp squib, that it pours down with rain, it puts people off. We weren't quite sure what the attendance would be. And then Fabio loses. And we talked about it in the build-up, and it very, very nearly happened, didn't it? And we'll come on to that. So I'm so pleased it ended the way it did, and that we got the ending to go with it. On the sort of the rain front, and Fab talked about this post-fight, it almost added to it. It made it more atmospheric, didn't it? By the time he came out, we had these sort of laser lights going across the stadium, and the way the rain sort of
flames
looked across of that. Like you say, a fighter coming out in all his regalia, sort of posing, chest out against the rain. There was something sort of gladiatorial about that that added to it all, wasn't there? So that didn't take anything away from it. How did you find it covering it, boys, as journalists? If people will indulge us for a minute, I don't know if you're that interested in the behind the scenes, but you're going to get it anyway. How did you find it? We talked about the logistics of the rain, but
people love behind the scenes stuff, Stu. I mean, I suppose in this instance, it's probably more interesting as to how you and Ross found it, because I've done a lot of fight sports events, so I was kind of got what I was expecting, really.
Well, it was a world away, as you've mentioned earlier, from covering football, certainly Premier League football. You're right. If you take one step out of line, certainly at a Premier League football match, it feels like you'll be sniped. You'll get a security guard getting somebody up high in the sky has spotted you on the camera, and within seconds you can't be there, mate. And
license revoked. Yeah.
Let me have a look at your pass. I know you've not got a turquoise with a yellow slash marker on it, so you can't go there. And it's there's a lot of people, a lot of security, a lot of media middlemen. It runs to clockwork in terms of managers, right? You now got to do your international broadcast, then you got to do this, etc. As you mentioned with boxing, it felt like anything goes. We were given a warm welcome by Queensberry and the people that sort of put it on. It seemed a bit airy-fairy in terms of, where do we go to speak to fighters afterwards? Oh, well, there's some boards set up. They might do it around there. Bit difficult at a stadium fight. So I just sort of took it upon myself, really. We just decided as the boxers left the ring and we had some local fighters on the undercard that we'll talk about, I literally just man-marked them all the way back to their changing room. I sort of blended in. I was wearing a cap, so I kind of probably could pass as part of the coaching team maybe. And I just literally walked alongside them while they made the reverse ring walk back to the dressing rooms. And before you knew it, I was in the bowels of the stadium, in the tunnel. I was in the medics room. I was seeing them get their hands unwrapped, get checked over. There was no, can we do this on video? Are we allowed to do it this way? We just did it, and it was great. And I think with boxing and other sports, sometimes the one thing that goes against football is that it kind of loses itself a little bit in terms of it's got almost too big for its own good. And you lose that access for us as media to the athletes, which in turn means that the audience maybe loses that connection with the people, their heroes. So, we was able to video them in that moment directly after the adrenaline, while the adrenaline was still flowing, and get those raw reaction from them. And that was great. So, I enjoyed that side of things. That was good.
It's sterilised, isn't it, Stu? Like you say, football, because it is also media managed and cliche ridden. It becomes sterile and dull. Whereas the thing I love about fight sports and fighters as a whole is they're real people with real lives, real stories, and they're open. And you're backstage. You have a story to tell from this. Where Lewis Richardson, Olympic bronze medalist, not many people win. Not many people get to the Olympics, let alone win a bronze medal or a medal. You followed him back to his dressing room and spoke to him after his debut. You were literally in the medics room with this guy. That's sensational access. And as I say, it's raw, it's real, and it's immediate. And because football has become such a behemoth and so overmanaged, I don't think we get, a lot of the time, we don't get the real people, the real side of it, like you say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The footballers are real people with real stories themselves. We just maybe
they're not allowed to tell them. That's the problem.
And it's so ingrained in them from such a young age not to give anything away and to sort of roll out the cliches that we don't get to see that side of it enough. But no, that was great. While we've mentioned it, before we get onto Fab, should we mention the undercard, because we had a packed undercard that sort of started around 5 o'clock, and we had sort of 3 fighters of particular interest, didn't we? All representing Ipswich, all came out, all had people with the Ipswich flags around them. First of which was Gideon Jonas, who's got a fantastic story, middleweight boxer, and he lives in Ipswich. He said he's just bought a house in Ipswich, but he's from outside the area originally, but he got placed at Woodbridge Barracks. He's a serving army officer many years ago. He's very much an Ipswich boy. He's got an Ipswich partner, and his fight ended in a draw, and it was one that he probably wasn't expected to get anything from, really, was it, Mark, looking at his opponent's record?
No, I mean, all 3 of these guys have got great stories. Obviously, Fab's story at the top of the card is incredible, but in terms of stories behind these guys, it's very, very compelling. Gideon, as you say, he serves in the army, parachute engineer regiment at Woodbridge. So he took this fight against Sam Gilly, who's 18-1, big time, kind of highly rated prospect. He took it on a matter of days' notice. He fought on May 17th for the Southern Area title, lost a very hard fight on points against a really good opponent, then parachuted out of a plane into Sweden for work. Then did a week of that, came back, went up to Scotland to support a friend of his who was fighting Moses Atauma, who's like one of the big heavyweight prospects internationally, and then got offered the fight on the way back from Scotland. I think he said he had like a burger in his hand at the time. And not only did he take it late, he wasn't expected to really do anything, but he took the fight a distance. And I think a lot of people felt like he won. He did tremendously. Very difficult to get a decision against the home fighter in that scenario. Called a draw by the referee. And I think you spoke to him afterwards, Stu. He's back doing army business today. And he's probably jumping out of a plane somewhere else today. So he basically just does boxing for a rest from like.
Ross, I can see you moving, but I've lost Mark.
Oh, he's back. Mark's back.
Okay, right.
I think I'm back.
Yeah, we lost you there for a minute.
Where did you lose me?
Yeah, no, you said he's it's he'll probably be back boxing for a rest. It's almost, I hesitate to say hobby, because he certainly takes it very seriously and he wants to get to a stage where maybe he can make it his career. But to be jumping out of planes during the week and then boxing at the weekend, he goes back. What did you do at the weekend? I've just had a tear up in the middle of Portman Road. Fantastic story. I think he's in Wales this week. He's doing some army work there, from what he was saying. But yeah, jumping out of planes, a para engineer. I'm assuming he jumps out of planes and fixes things and has to very much sort of protect himself in certain scenarios as well. So he was great. That was quite a scrappy, scruffy fight. There was lots of sort of warnings from the referee. He says next time I'll try to we'll try to make it a bit more clean and be able to get the win over the line. But I think he was pretty pleased. Certainly his team felt that he deserved the win there. They said maybe we'll be able to run it back and have a look. But that was our first sort of local interest fight of the night, which was a great story. Then we moved on to Jack Williams, who was the float fighter, which you had to explain to me, Mark. The float fighter is someone that's not kind of on the running order. They kind of slot you in whenever they get a sort of a free moment. Obviously, some fights go the distance. Some you can get a first round knockout. So they're not quite sure. Sometimes they've got to slot someone in. So you said it must have been really difficult for Jack, not knowing exactly when he was going to come on. But he ended up sort of coming on sort of middle of the bill in the end, didn't he?
It actually worked out really well for him, didn't he? Because he got on the main card as a result. So the float fighter, as you say, is a guy or girl who they don't know where they're going to be in the order. But with the TV and all that kind of stuff, if there's an early knockout, then it's nice to have someone they can bring on to kind of fill that space. But sometimes you see the float fighter on after the main event, which obviously would not have been ideal. In this case, I think he was on after the European heavyweight fight, which ended early, didn't it? And Jack came out. The problem, of course, as the fighter and as the team, you don't know when to get ready, get warmed up. So I spoke to Matt literally before Jack came out, Matt Brennan, one of his team. He said he's been ready for 2 hours. And he came out and clearly, big pressure, first opportunity on a big show, third professional fight, fighting under Queensbury, hopefully trying to, get a contract with Frank Warren's lot. And he was spectacular against an Argentinian guy who's super tough, had loads more fights, weighed in 6 pounds heavier than him as well. I thought Jack looked absolutely mustard. And he had a big following, didn't he? I think that's when the real chanting started, Stu, from the Cobbold, as you say, because I think a lot of his fans were in there, and there was a lot of support for him. So I thought he did excellently, given the background to it, the pressure on him, the emotion of it as well. Obviously we spoke to him in the build up. He fights in memory of his mum. He wears purple into the ring in her memory because that was her favourite colour. And him and his brother there, Jordan, younger brother, in the corner. I thought he did really well.
He did, yeah. Another Ipswich boy. I think he'd sold officially around 400 tickets. He says the number would have been greater. In the end, he had to get quite a lot of his sort of following, his fan base, to go kind of through the club rather than through kind of his channels. So he had a lot of people in that stadium, and that was when the noise started to go up. You could hear them from the crowd. And as you say, he's got mum emblazoned across his shorts for his late mum, Sarah, who was, his biggest supporter, who's sadly now no longer with us. His younger brother, Jordan, is in his corner. And he was sensational. I think he would have got the knockout had it not been for the fact he said he caught the guy on the top of the dome in the first round, he said, and injured his hand in the process.
Yeah.
I think he felt like there would have been an opportunity to put him away, but he didn't quite trust how that hand was going to hold up. So in the end, he was sort of comfortable points winner, and it was great that we got that first home victory over the line at that stage in the night.
I love the line you got from him as well, Stu. And you said, "What's next?" And he said, "I can't wait to have a Five Guys." He's been like training for 11 weeks and dieting and stuff.
That's
so
all he was thinking. He said it to you pre-fight, and that was his main motivation. I was kind of hoping more for like, sky's the limit. This is who I want to fight next. I'm going to call out you. He just wanted to get a burger in his belly, as Ross would say at that stage.
Yeah. Rossi, I've got a question for you while we're talking about this. What's it like? How's it contrast the difference between taking pictures of football, which is what you do, professionally for a living, and boxing? Because I've always thought capturing fight sports, you almost have to be able to see the future. You have to see what's going to happen before it happens and be in the right sort of kind of spot for the picture, predicting where they're going to move in the ring and all that kind of stuff. How does it differ?
It was very difficult because with football, you're just in one spot and you're just shooting across, the pitch. With boxing, you've got to sort of shoot through the ropes, sort of do an angle below. And also, annoyingly, apparently, different promotions do it differently in terms of the canvas. So we were a bit further away. Normally, you're like right next to it. But Queensberry, they have like obviously
it's like an LED thing, isn't it?
Around the thing, which obviously adds a bit more. You're away from the ring, so you had to really annoyingly, I'm not that tall really. I haven't really got long arms, so I had to really get myself up, use my elbows. There's actually some photographers actually had
pads
on their elbows to protect them because obviously they're experienced pros. Obviously me, I'm just there as a rookie just coming in. I should have brought my stool, but that's something I've learned now. But yeah, it was hard. I will admit the first few fights because I was just trying to get used to it because I've done a few little events we've obviously covered.
Done cage
fighting,
stuff,
and that's obviously tricky because you got to shoot through a
cage,
which is was difficult, but I got used to it. So that's a good thing. You've got those early rounds or early sort of fights to get used to it. That's what you said to me, go out there, just go and get some practice. And when I got to say, Jack's fight, I was ready, I was sorted. But yeah, you sort of have to predict the future and sort of don't keep your eye off it because as we get to, I do miss a big moment, and I've had a few messages because obviously a lot of people saw me ringside, and the one moment where I decided to send a photo is when a big thing happens. So I need to learn to stop doing that. I just need to you know what, the journalists don't need their pictures just yet; they can wait. But yeah, it was an experience that I've learned from, and I made a few notes just in case I do it again.
Should we put a bow on the undercard fighters as well? You've mentioned him already, Lewis Richardson, Olympic bronze medalist. He's from Colchester, so he's only up the road. He used to sell pies at Portman Road as a student, so he's very much got links to the area. He came out with real swagger. He looked great in the white shorts, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think with the gold lettering. Came out, did the business. He cruised to a points victory over his 4 rounds, I think it was, wasn't it, in his middleweight contest. That was his pro debut. There's not many that make their pro debuts in a setting like that, is there?
No, he looked great, didn't he? I mean, obviously you'd expect him to win. He was fighting a guy who had lots of fights, but at this stage of his career, Lewis Richards is expected to win. It's all about the performance and kind of getting that first one out of the way. He did look great, as you say, with the kind of sparkling white shorts. He's an excellent, really cultured fighter. Moves really well, southpaw, and he absolutely dominated the fight. Looked great. And as we were saying, Stu, got that Olympic rings tattoo as well, hasn't he? Not many people can have that. You can't have an Olympic tattoo unless you've been to the Olympics. And not only that,
slightly weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Not only that, he's won a medal. So
when we say been to the Olympics, competed in the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't just go and watch an event and then go, right, I'm going to get an Olympic tattoo.
I was a volunteer at 2012, greeting people at Stratford Station.
Exactly.
Meant a lot to me.
Yeah. But again, I alluded to it earlier, you kind of followed him back to his dressing room and stuff. And you said that he was just enthusing about the the ring walk, wasn't he? He was just
Yeah,
excited
I followed him back out the ring, and the first thing he was talking about, and he was buzzing about, was, I'm really pleased with the music choice I made. Did you think I got it? He wasn't speaking to his coaches about, what did you think in round two? Did that slip of the jab or whatever? It was, I got the timing just right, didn't I? When the beat dropped there, and I took that first step in the ring walk, and that shows you how much that sort of mental preparation means to boxers to sort of get themselves in the right headspace going into it. So he just sort of said, I wanted to be as present as possible, and I wanted to soak it all up, because you don't get moments like that. You don't get your pro debut again. You certainly, stadium fights like that don't come along very often. And I think he enjoyed every moment. So that was great. And that was, by that stage, we were building and building to the main event. We've alluded to it. So with no further ado, let's get into it. Fabio Wardley, hairs on the back of the neck were standing up when he came out. For me, what was it like for you?
Well, it was electrifying, Stu, wasn't it? There was, as I say, there's an electricity, a rawness, something that connects right to the inside you with a big time boxing event, because it's so easy to compare. Everyone understands what a fight is, and everyone surely appreciates what guts it takes to step into the ring, and not only step into the ring, but step in the ring at the highest level. There's a great quote from Hemingway about boxing, people going to the ring to attract adulation, but also the risk is of their greatest humiliation. Fab could have been knocked out on international TV in front of all his friends and family at Portman Road. Massive set of potatoes just to get into the ring. And I was absolutely buzzing. I don't know how you were, boys. Obviously, this was kind of your first rodeo in terms of big time boxing. So although I've been at big shows and I've seen these big walkouts before, because it was Fab, because I've covered him for so long, I can't help but feel emotionally connected to it. I don't know what it was like for you, boys.
It was, obviously, we covered Fab at the O2, didn't we, last year? But that, obviously, it was a great event. Obviously, it was still a great show. But obviously, this was Portman Road. His ends. And obviously, I'm a Chantry boy as well. I actually went to school with Fab, so I sort of had that connection, and sort of seeing his mum and his dad out there as well, sort of cheering him on. And obviously, he's heavily pregnant missus as well. Obviously going to labour during the show, which is good. But yeah, it was incredible. I will admit that I did need a pee, and that's another thing about experiencing covering fights as well, because I was sort of told by one of the photographers, like, try your best to not move from your spot, because chances out there is people, maybe they take it. So I was trying my best not to drink too much water, because I knew I was going to need a pee. So it was probably just before Fab came on. I was like, oh my god, I need a wee here. But I just went, gotta hold it in. I do have an empty bottle I could potentially pee in, but I don't know what the guys around me would be thinking if I did that. But yeah, it was electric, and just obviously, I was sort of looking at Mark Ashton and Kieran McKenna, who was right next to me as well. They were buzzing. It was just great atmosphere, and the light show and everything. It was just unbelievable. And yeah, when obviously Fab came on, it was just goosebumps, and just sort of seeing a local lad, main event at Portman Road. It was unbelievable moments too.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. Sorry, I'm just trying to get a mental image of maybe Ross knocking a bottle of urine over onto the ring, and that also providing a slip hazard.
Just being captured on DAZN worldwide, just urinating into a bottle.
Yeah. Talking of being captured, you mentioned your reaction to the knockout. We were captured throughout the evening. We didn't realise that the Talk Sport commentators were being sort of filmed backward-facing cameras for a live stream, which I believe you can now still watch back. So you can kind of see Mark and I just sort of in the backdrop of that, and you can, if you go to the knockout moment, you can see Mark's excitement captured in all its glory. You're up out your seat, I think, quicker than anyone if you look back at that.
Because I knew it was over, mate. I knew it was over. It was done. You could see the way he went down. It was done. But obviously, we're jumping ahead.
We are jumping ahead. Yeah. The fight itself. You talk about the sort of the difference for sort of boxing atmospheres, and I think no other sport. You always get, you can get big moments in sport where there's a lot on the line in terms of qualification or winning a trophy, and you can be, you know, if you're a football fan, you've gone week in, week out, and it means something to you. But in boxing, there's always that extra jeopardy of someone could get hurt. And that is, you know, some people shy away from that and feel like it's a bit brutal, but it does tap into that almost sort of caveman part of the human psyche, is that, you know, there is an extra element of jeopardy there. And I think when, you know, you in particular are more invested in Fab because you've known him for longer, but even as our sort of the Ipswich family around him, you're not wanting to see your own ultimately lose, but also get hurt as well. And when you're talking heavyweights, there is an extra element of that. So I think that also underpins that sort of crackling of excitement, anticipation, but also a little bit of fear as well. I cannot imagine what it would be like to be somebody's, you know, mother, heavily pregnant, partner, loved one, brother, sister, or whatever, watching them get into a ring.
I have a small experience of it because my wife, well, obviously both me and my wife used to compete, so I've watched her fight, and the first time she fought, I think it's the most nervous I've ever been in my life, and I was there's a video of it somewhere where I'm literally screaming at her. You know, she's got her coaches in the corner. I'm filming it, you know, a fair few feet away from the ring. But I would, you know, it's there's nothing else quite like it. That kind of emotional investment, because as you say, it's jeopardy. It's real jeopardy. It's not like watching someone go and play tennis or, you know, even football. You're not going to get seriously injured. You might do your knee or whatever, but you know, in fight sports, there is a real jeopardy, and there's that extra kind of level. You don't play boxing, as the saying goes. So there's that extra level of jeopardy, and I can't believe Fab's missus Charlotte, you know, made it through the evening in a heavily pregnant, especially the way the fight went as well.
She's due to give birth like any time now this week, isn't she? So they had a doctor on the front row with her, I believe, just in case.
Yeah,
you know, the worst came to the worst. You know, and that is as stressful as an environment as you're going to get, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I cannot imagine what that was like. So we get to the fight. We've had the big build up. Fab's come out to his traditional walk-on music. He's decked in the Ipswich Town colours. He's got like what did you describe it like
it's a gladiatorial tunic, isn't it? It's
yes.
What it is. I think that's what it's meant to be. It's very much kind of Russell Crowe-esque from Gladiators, and he's got war written on the front of it, which I absolutely love, Stu. God, it's getting my blood going now. So yeah, it could not have been kind of more of a perfect stage being set. And then we're like, this is his big night. And then of course the fight starts, and it starts to go on.
Yeah, well, we started pre-match, and I think pre-fight, in the podcast, and I asked you, you know, about Justis Huni, and you felt that many were maybe underestimating him, and there was obviously the talk from Eddie Hearn, Fabio's former promoter, now in charge of Justis, who said the late replacement of Justis Huni could come back to bite you here. This is a serious banana skin. This is a guy on the way up with skills, and everyone's turned up at Portman Road probably thinking Fab's the overwhelming favourite and he'll win, and because it's a replacement fighter, it's not as exciting. And you felt that maybe a few were sleeping on Justis Huni, and that feeling intensified sort of during fight week, didn't it? Because we saw his calm demeanour, and he kept saying, even at the weigh-in the day before that we went to, I'm here to have fun, mate. You know, I've taken this on late notice, and I'm here to show this side of the world what I'm all about, and I believe in myself. And you can't fake that. You got the feeling that he was going to embrace the sort of the booze and the situation, and he wasn't going to be fazed by it. On the flip side, we talked how will it affect Fabio, and you've talked about it there. The pressure of knowing that if you don't deliver, there's a feeling that you're letting a lot of people down, and the stage that you're on, would that lift him or would that drain him? I think ultimately we probably saw more of the latter, didn't we? This fight didn't start how Fabio would have envisaged.
Well, the whole fight, I don't think went how Fabio would have envisaged, apart from the end. Well, you know, he's confident of getting the knockout, but we have to pause here and say huge respect to Justis Huni, because he was so confident, respectful, all class in the build-up. In the fight itself, he boxed absolutely beautifully. You know, we said in the preview that he's a great great boxer, fast, moves really well. And after the first couple of rounds, I thought were close. I gave Fab the first round, Huni the second, just edged it, and then Huni then just bossed it from that point onwards. He was boxing so well. The jab he couldn't miss Fab with. He was jolting the head back of Fab constantly with the jab. The left hook, which I highlighted before the fight, was absolute money all night, particularly Stu sinking that into the body, the kind of
body
chest
shots
of Fab, which was definitely kind of draining the battery. And as the fight went on, you could see in Fab's body language, he was getting more and more frustrated, wasn't he? He was talking to himself. He was getting clipped with stuff that I don't think he thought he was going to get clipped with. Huni was finding him so easily. And it, as I say, we'll talk about clearly at the end of the fight, it didn't go the way Huni wanted it, but the whole promotion, fight night, the event itself, and then post-fight, Justis Huni has been nothing but class. Even in the way, he's talked about, he didn't complain about the ending. Again, we'll probably talk about that. And just said, look, I'll come again. And he will, because his stock has only risen. Okay, he lost, but he dominated pretty much every minute of that fight and showed how good he is. And he just got caught. And with someone like Fab Wardley, we said before, he's got that equalizer. He's got that touch of death power that not a lot of people have. So Huni will definitely come again. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him win a world title himself one day. He was absolute mustard.
When we were doing the key matchups pre-fight, we talked about Huni's edge coming from his greater experience. We talked about it. Fabio Wardley, 4 white qualifieds, no amateur experience, straight into the pro game. He's only that would have been his 24th fight, 23rd fight ever. Huni's sort of approaching 60, isn't he? He had quite a stellar amateur career, so ultimately he's the more schooled boxer, and I think you could kind of see that in his movement, in his defense, in his fight management. Even to my untrained eye, you could see that he was schooling him for a lot of that fight. I mean, Ross, you're closest of all. We talked about it fairly early on. You could see sort of Fab muttering to himself in the ring, almost trying to G himself up and get himself going. Were you sort of feeling that ringside?
Yeah, I will admit he was taking a lot of punches, and obviously that was a sort of similar to the one at the O2, wasn't it, Heath? Like he was taking a lot of a bit of a beating.
The one at the O2 was nip and tuck. Like Flavor Clark dominated the first 4 rounds of that, and then Fab dropped him, and it became just a mental war. And both guys were having their moments. But this was one-way traffic from pretty much the first round onwards. The first round is the only round I gave Fab. I had him down 8-1 going into the 10th round. But what I mean, Rossi, we were wincing, and I'm used to being fairly close to this kind of stuff. But some of the shots that Huni was landing, you could feel the thud kind of echo. So what was it like being right next to it?
Yeah, I was trying my best to keep my mouth closed because I didn't want any blood or any sort of that would have been. I had to call up you and say, "Yeah, I'm off this week because I've got whatever." But yeah, it was, and obviously, we're close to Fab, so obviously I was, supporting Fab, and every time he got hit, I was like, "Oh no!" And I was worried. Definitely, it must have been like the 6th or 7th round. I was, "Oh my god, Huni just needs to land one really good punch, and that could wipe Fab out." But I think he actually joked in the press conference, didn't he, Fab? Like, obviously, the motto is for Richard's Town is running towards adversity. He's like running towards punches, because that's what he was doing all the time. But I think I turned to one of the tourists next to me, and I was like, I was worried here. But he proves he is just a fighter. He's got so much heart, and he took all those punches, and then we'll get onto it. But yes, it was.
He was done. To be honest, I thought he was done. I'd kind of given up hope. It was not because. Well, because of the damage that he'd taken. I thought he looked mentally. I thought he looked jaded. I thought he'd been softened up in the body quite early on, and I think that was sort of restricting him in what he could do. But the main thing was, it didn't. I know we talk about the equalizer and what he can unload, but he didn't look like he was going to unleash it. He wasn't throwing any punches. None of that right hand that we've seen from him. And I think in the end, Frank Warren got up and went to his corner and just released the right hand. It came pretty clear midway through that the points, you're not going to win this on points. The only way you're going to win this now is with the knockout. But he didn't seem to be going for it for whatever reason, whether he was hurt, whether he was tired, probably a mixture of all of the above, the pressure, everything. He wasn't throwing the right hand, was he? Until he did.
I need to highlight, you say you're not a learned boxing knowledge, Stu, but you made a great point watching it. You said Huni's boxing skill, fantastic, and what he was doing so well was he was moving away from the right hand of Fab at all times, so Fab did not have the opportunity to throw it and land it. So I
was watching it, the movement was always sort of clockwise in the ring, and I think that was he was implying enough front foot pressure without sort of walking in down, but always sort of wheeling him away from his right hand, always taking that sort of power on the back foot of Fabio Wardley. And that was, to my untrained eye, that was sort of maybe a little bit more boxing nous there, taking away
100%.
Kind of Fabio's
that's textbook boxing, which is what he was doing. He was boxing beautifully. And going into the 10th round, as you say, Stu, I thought the fight was over. All Huni had to do was stay on his feet until the end of the fight, and he'd won. And he'd won massively wide as well. It wasn't even close. And I didn't realise, but the guys on TalkSport in front of us were talking about whether or not Fab's corner would pull him out, because he was getting
spitting blood, wasn't he? He was bleeding from the mouth. It was taking some damage.
I mean, I never thought it got to the point where he was badly hurt. And I don't think that would have been a genuine conversation, because he has that equaliser. And Ben Davidson actually said after the fight, no, that's not something that was being considered. He wasn't getting badly hurt. But yeah, going into that 10th round, the final round of the fight, as it turned out, I don't think anyone in that stadium would have said Fab's going to win this. It was
the crowd, the atmosphere had dropped off. You could feel it in the stadium, and I was sort of thinking there was a few times where the crowd tried to sort of get going, but it was more of a trying to give him a lift. But they weren't being given anything to feed off. I was thinking, just unload a flurry here just to get the crowd that can get you going again. But it just wasn't heading that way. And if it looked like any man was going to land the killer blow, it was Justis, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Before we get on to the end, talk to me about Fab's style. He's very low-handed. He doesn't have much of a defense there, does he? Is that because of... Yeah, go on.
He's always carried his hands low. And I know it drives Rob Hodgins, his coach, mental. And Fab has often kind of joked about it. Obviously, he's not come through the kind of ABA route where you're taught straight away to keep your hands up at all times. He's very much low hands, and he relies on his reflexes, kind of pulling him out of the way of stuff. But because of that, when he's not on, or he's facing a guy like Huni, and he said afterwards, didn't he, that I've never fought a guy that fast who moves that well. He can get caught.
When we're talking fast, we're talking about hand speed, aren't we? That jab was laser-like. It was in and out in a flash, wasn't it? And,
and when Fab is someone who tries to pull back to try and avoid the jab, and he's not pulling back fast enough, obviously that actually, kind of in terms of the impression of it for the judges and everyone watching, because he's pulling back anyway to try and get away from it, makes it look even more powerful, the jab. So he was, and I would say that's the one thing I got wrong in the build up to the fight. Got a lot right, Stu. I won't blame it on trumpet, but the one thing I got wrong was I didn't think that Huni would be able to find Fab as easily as he did, and I thought Fab would be able to find Huni slightly more easy. Well, he couldn't find him at all, could he? Until the final punch. So that was something I got big time wrong on that front.
One thing you did get right was you said that maybe Justis Huni would outbox him, would be ahead on points, but that Fab would land that trademark Suffolk punch from Fabio Wardley would land in devastating fashion. I said, did you care to put a round on it? And you thought about it and you said 10. And boy, were you right.
Yeah, I mean, I got everything else right, Stu. Let's be honest, shall we? I said that Huni would box his way to a lead. I didn't think he'd put on quite the masterclass that he did. And I said that the key factor in the fight would be the power of Fab and whether or not he could land it. And if he did, could Huni take it? And we got the answer in round 10. And I've seen people say it was a lucky punch. Absolute nonsense. If you're saying that, you know nothing at all about boxing. That punch, the overhand right punch, is Fabio's money punch. We said before the fight, that is what Huni has been caught with before. And the way he threw it, it has to be the best punch of his career so far. In terms of the context of it, where he was, what he needed at that time. Huni went to throw the jab. Fab slipped it lovely to the left-hand side, head off the centre line, which is what they teach you when you slip. And then at the same time, he launched this right hand over the top. straight onto the whiskers of Huni, and I could see, having been ringside for a lot of fights, the way Huni went down, it was over straight away. As soon as that landed, the way he went down, he was not recovering. He did very well to get back onto one knee and then back to his feet, but there's all this hoo-ha from his management team about fast count and all that kind of stuff. He was done. If that fight had carried on, he'd have been seriously hurt. You know, someone diminished in front of Fabio Wardley, who punches like he does, Huni would have been seriously, seriously hurt. So I've got absolutely no problem with the stoppage. Huni didn't have any problem with the stoppage. Hasn't mentioned it at all in the aftermath. It's just his manager, and I'm even Eddie Hearn, you know, had nothing to say about it. His manager, I'm sure, thought, you know, the fight was won, and it's gone away, and he's got to hang it on something. But Huni was done.
Is it more the optics of how quickly after the 10 count it's kind of waved away, just for the sort of the optics of the crowd? I don't disagree with the decision and the logic of that you're saying, but obviously the ringside judge starts the count, and you see the referee in there, because some people have jumped on the fact that it looks like he starts the count from 5. If you look, he takes his lead from the ringside, who starts the count. I know that's boxing, right? So he starts the count from the minute he hits the deck. Referee takes it up, he looks across, takes it from 5. Minute he gets to sort of 10, just as he's stepping up, he sort of waves it away. Maybe just for the optics of the crowd, almost just take a split second just to look at him and then wave it away. Otherwise, you leave yourself open to accusations of wanting to dive in too quickly. But I completely agree with you. When you've taken that sort of power from Fabio Wardley, you know, we're in the business of, like, ultimately we've got to protect human beings here.
That's what the ref's there for.
From danger. And we've seen it before. You know, that there was no disagreement, was there, from Huni, was there, afterwards?
No, as you say, Stu, that is the way boxing works. As a referee, when there's a knockdown, you make sure the fighter who scored the knockdown goes to a neutral corner, which is exactly what the referee does, and then you pick up the count from the timekeeper ringside who's counting. It's exactly what happens. He gets to 10. People are saying it was a fast count, waves the count off. But as you say, Stu, this is boxing. People get seriously hurt in this sport, and I'd always rather it be an early stoppage than one that's a second too late. And had Huni been allowed to continue, Fab is a horrifying finisher, and he would essentially just being teeing off on someone who was diminished in front of him. So it would have been potentially, you know, horrific what happened. So I got absolutely no problem with the stoppage. Neither did Eddie Hearn, neither did Justis Huni. And it was just a tremendous movie-esque style finish to the fight, wasn't it?
What's your reaction, Ross? Is it? I mean, we've got the ability to jump out of our seats and react to it. You've got a camera in your hand. You've got a, you know, you can't react in the same way. What was it like for you?
I missed it because that was when I was sending photos over to you boys. Because that's when, I will admit, that's when I thought, Fab, this is lost, this fight. So I think that's when I was like, okay, I'm just going to send some photos over just so you've got some ready to put for a report. So obviously during that period, I was on my phone. That's how I sort of upload photos. And then in that split moment, I sort of look up and I just saw the punch. I went, oh, crap. But also I'm not happy. But I was like, just panicking with my camera, trying to get at least the reaction of it. But yeah, it was. I was obviously buzzing for Fab because I sort of knew straight away, yeah, Justis not going to get up from this. But I was a little bit annoyed with myself because I missed the punch. But I think a lot of us did as well, because once again, boxing is different to football because it is just split second moment. You have to be there right time. And it's not that often, I don't think, people can get that knockout punch because you just don't know. It can happen out of nowhere. And it was out of nowhere. So it was a great moment because you just felt the buzz in the air. Everyone knew, just electric atmosphere. And but I need to make a note of myself. Stop sending photos when there's action.
Yeah. I put something on Twitter, Stu, and on other social medias that said, I think I've covered sports professionally for 15 years, and I've been a journalist for 25. I don't think I've seen anything as dramatic as that in terms of the whole context of the event, what it meant, the way the fight was going, and people have come back at me and gone, what? Saw me in, all that kind of stuff. Yes, that was very dramatic, but this was the equivalent of Fab was losing 8-1. In football, You can't score a goal from 8-1 that wins you the game. The beauty of boxing and fight sports in general is that you can lose every single second of every single round and you can still win the fight. And that's what we had here. It was remarkable, extraordinary. Yeah. And as I say, I think in terms of what I've seen in my life, which is longer than I'd care to admit, I don't think I've been, clearly there's recency bias and all the extra emotion going into it, but it was so dramatic. It was brilliant.
I think everyone will have their own added emotions depending on what you're invested in the most, aren't you? So if you're a diehard Ipswich Town fan who's been week in, week out for decades and you've been through the doldrums for a long time, that Sarmiento moment, which is bloody hell, we might actually get to the Premier League again, which didn't feel, possible, and it's come in last-ditch fashion in a game where they were battered for a lot of the first half. I could see why you would put that right up there. But for you, you're a boxing man. You've been invested in Fabio. That's going to give it way more points. You weren't there that night for the Sarmiento game. You're not a week in, week out Ipswich Town viewer. So it's not going to count the same, is it? So, everybody's going to be different. But in terms of pure drama, like you say, it was the shock value of that knockout, wasn't it? It just came from nowhere. It didn't look like it was going to come. And it was just that collective roar of, I would say, shock rather than elation. The elation followed, and Fabio himself admitted sort of first emotion was relief rather than anything.
Yeah, I feel like you told me off there, Stu. But I still can't see that a goal that wins a game is as dramatic. Anyway, I'm not going to get into this, but this was tremendously dramatic, and I loved it. And we have some clips. Should we play some of these?
Yeah. Shall we? Should we listen to the man himself? I think it's probably time to hear how Fab felt and how he saw it.
Rank in terms of punches you've ever thrown, Fab.
Well, my hand still hurts, so I think it's up there. Look, I saw a couple of clips when I got back to the changing room, and it looks like a wondrous punch from just kind of pulled it out of the bag, pulled it out of nowhere. And it may sound kind of, may sound a bit silly, but we did very much drill that exact punch over and over again. I just wasn't letting it go. I think even a lot of the fight, Frank was screaming at me, let the right hand go, and I just wasn't. I was being too coy, too cute. I was thinking about things too much, and rather than just letting my natural instincts take over and just letting shots go.
Just a word for the fans. What an event! What a way to finish it. I mean, you couldn't have really done that.
Yeah, look, this does not happen without the fans. I said in the ring as well, there's been so many great fighters who have great fan bases, great support, they can shift a bunch of tickets, and even then they still don't get to pull off a stadium fight in their hometown. I'm just little old white-collar Wardley who somehow pulled this off. I think I was walking around the ring saying to everyone, what are we doing? What is going on here? But none of this happens without everyone that bought a ticket, everyone that supported this journey from the start, everyone that's believed in me, everyone that's been a supporter, and also it very much doesn't happen without the man to my right as well. The first time we sat down together, I put a fight at Portman Road at the top of my list, and Frank with no hesitation said very much, yep, that's no problem, we can make that happen. So thank you to him as well for having a huge amount of faith in me.
Strengthened the bond, hasn't it, between Ipswich Town fans, football fans, and Fabio Wardley. I think there's going to be some serious appetite to follow him wherever he goes next, or indeed potentially put on another one of these at Portman Road, do you reckon?
Absolutely. And just another note there, Stu, press conference, a different experience again for you lot that are used to kind of sitting there being very regimented. Essentially what happens with that one is Frank Warren kind of wandered in and pretty much sat at the table while he waited for the team to go and get Fab, and he essentially just started talking, didn't he? There was no like, right, ask questions now. It just became like a conversation between us and Frank until Fab came in, and then again, there's no management of it in that regard. The Queensbury people are just kind of standing watching. It's actually Frank Warren himself, when we've got about 18 minutes in, goes, right, okay, I suppose one more question and we better go. There's none of that media management around the kind of the boxing stuff, and also the fact we were allowed to film it, Rossi, which is great as well. So feel again like we can get people a bit closer to things and actually see things. I I spoke to Mark Ashton afterwards, which I think we've got a clip as well. Grabbed it. That's another thing. I would never walk up to Mark Ashton on a match day and go, Mark, a few words. And he would then, if I did that, I'd probably be banned. So the fact he kind of came up to me and went, yeah, no problem. He went into the ring, did a picture with Fab, then came back to me and we had a quick chat. He was buzzing, clearly, personal friend of Fab. Said, would you have him back? Of course. Do you want
to hear it?
Should we do it? Okay, Mark Heath here, then Mark Ashton. Mark, that was extraordinary. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No. Another amazing night here at Portman Road. We've seen some fantastic nights over the last couple of years, but I think that was something a little bit special.
And you obviously close personal friend of Fab. You get on really well. What was it like watching that? Because
painful.
Huni was dominating, wasn't he?
Yeah, look, it's painful. I've just said to him, you can duck Fab.
Yeah.
But no, look, again, he's another great representation of the town, the club, the county, the community, and he keeps marching forward. We're just very, very proud of him.
And we talk about running towards adversity. Never seen a fair example of that, have we?
No. It's just incredible. He just keeps going. He's resilient. And I'm just so proud of him.
Just very quickly, your thoughts on the event as a whole? The atmosphere in here was something special, wasn't it?
Yeah, as someone was saying earlier, we've been at the football club 4 years. We delivered 2 men's promotions, a women's promotion, Fabio Wardley fight, 3 Ed Sheeran concerts next week. I think it's good for the town's on the map, and the county's on the map, and I think everyone in this community should be very proud of themselves, very proud of their town. And I think tonight the town represented itself extremely well. Big well done to everyone.
And just finally, one more question. You'd have him back, would you?
Hell yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Cheers, Mark.
There we go. He was very excited.
2 classics of the genre there. The Mark Ashton hell yes, which he likes to roll out, and also journalists saying just one more question about 3 times, which we all do. We just try and just the last one from me. No, this really is the last one.
Yeah. Also, don't be worried. He referred there to Ed Sheeran concerts being next week. That's next month. He was just very excited. They haven't been moved. They are still in July. But again, that kind of access is not something we'd get, and it all kind of adds into that kind of atmosphere around the boxing. Sorry, Benson's coming. I'll mute myself in a second. But he was very excited, as you can hear.
Don't mute yourself too long, because I'm going to throw this back to you, because I guess the question is going to be, what next for Fabio now? Portman Road, another fight. Does this make the nature of this fight make it more or less likely? Because I would imagine if he'd have won this convincingly, it would have given him more chance of going into the real rarefied air of the Usyk Dubois winner and going straight in for a world title fight. But the fact that he was on the back foot for a lot of this fight, will they be a little bit more cautious about the opponent? And does that make Portman Road more likely now they've seen that there's kind of appetite for it? What do you reckon?
I think in the build-up, we talked about this being a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I'd say it's maybe because of how the event went and how successful it was and what a great night it was. I'd say that maybe it could happen again, but again, it would have to be the right fight. We've got Ashton and I think we've got a clip with Frank Warren as well, talking about coming back to Portman Road, open to it. But it would have to be the right fight. And what I mean by that is when you get into the likes of Usyk and Dubois and world title, genuine world titles, I don't think Portman Road would be big enough, frankly, to make the sort of money you'd expect from that sort of fight. So it is going to be interesting to see what they do with Fab next. I think there are a number of options. I don't think he'll be back at Portman Road next, but potentially somewhere down the line, there is that openness from both Frank, who made the point of saying how good Ipswich Town were to work with and Fab's team. And obviously there, Ashton, as you say, gave it the stone cold hell yeah when I asked him about coming back. So who knows?
Well, I'll play the Frank Warren clip, and then you can tell me who the next opponent is for Fabio Wardley. Go on.
So that's TikTok. Can I ask you both, Fab and Frank, what's next?
Him and his wife having a baby.
Yeah.
That's what's happening next. And then he's the WBA interim champion. There's another big fight on the big show on the 19th of July. 4 belts on the line. Somebody's going to come away with those 4 belts, and once that's done, there'll be some mandatories. And during that period of time, they'll all get a shot. All the various guys will get a shot for those belts, or for their specific belt. For me, whenever Fabio feels he's ready to go, we're here to make it happen for him. We love working with his team. Jay, everybody, this man here, I mean, he's done brilliant. Everyone, all of them, they're such a good people to work with, enthusiastic, get behind the promotion. It's a promoter's dream. It makes it really easy for us to do it, to put it together. So, we're with him and we're going to deliver for him.
I just spoke to Mark Ashton, ringside, CEO of Town.
Yeah.
He said they'll definitely have you back.
Yeah, we said we said that to him. We will be back, and a bit like the old Arnold Schwarzenegger, we will be back. We'll be back.
That was why I did it. That was why I made it so entertaining, because I wanted to come back. It was all part of the plan, guys. All part of the plan.
It was a good show. It was a great show. I mean, even despite the weather, the weather was better when we announced the fight 10 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But it was a fabulous night, and I'm proud of him. I'm proud of this guy's got a real. He's a boxer. He's a fighter, but he's got a heart. He's got that heart. He's got that fighter's heart, that resilience. And there were moments in that fight where he was getting caught, and I could see other fighters may have, not saying, give up, but they maybe they would have. They wouldn't have gone on like he did. He showed a lot of resilience, a lot of grit in there, and as he said at the press conference, as I mentioned earlier when we started, and he takes me one punch. And he found a punch and he did it. He done the business in style. That's what he is. He's a fighter.
Go on then, map out his career. How far can this one punch power with some inexperience and vulnerabilities in there, which he acknowledges himself. What next, and how far can it take him?
You have to say, Stu, that combination of vulnerability and one punch knockout power makes him tremendously box office, because he's always in exciting fights. In terms of what's next, I mean, Frank there's talking about the actually historic undisputed heavyweight title fight between Usyk and Dubois on July the 19th at Wembley. That's the first time an undisputed heavyweight title fight's happened in the UK. If Usyk wins that, having already beaten Dubois, you wonder what else he has left to prove. Is he going to retire? And then if he does, then all the belts are up for grabs again. If Dubois wins, you'd imagine there'd be a third fight between the two of them. So I think that's kind of probably a bit kind of down the line, as it were. I think there's an opportunity, if they wanted to pursue a title next, to go after Kubrat Pulev, who is the WBA regular, another version of the world title. I want to stress here, there's a lot of belts in boxing. Makes it a bit of a nonsense, a soup, as it were, to try and see who has what. But the heavyweight champion of the world, in anyone's eyes, is Alexander Usyk. He is the only heavyweight champion of the world. He doesn't hold all the belts, basically, because he lashed one into the bin, and Daniel Dubois picked it out of the bin. So he is the champion. Unless you beat Alexander Usyk, you can't call yourself the champion of the world. He is the undisputed best heavyweight in the world. But below them, Dubois got a belt. He's going to put that on the line against Usyk. And then the WBA regular, Usyk is the WBA super heavyweight champion. WBA regular champion is Kubrat Pulev. And now Fab is a WBA interim champion. So in theory, he should be next in line to fight Pulev, who I think has a fight lined up with Michael Hunter, the American. So down the line, maybe Pulev, if he comes through that fight with Hunter. Pulev, I know, was offered the fight with Fab at Portman Road, didn't fancy it. I think he would be a beatable opponent for Fab. He's 44 years old, and I think Fab would maybe be able to beat him and take that regular, and then again that moves him kind of closer to the very top of the tree. There are other interesting ones, Stewie, though, like Deontay Wilder, and I can't believe I'm about to say this. Deontay Wilder versus Fabio Wardley would be such an easy sell, because you've got two guys who have got horrifying power. Fabio is basically the new Deontay Wilder, someone who could be outboxed for an entire fight and then knock you out in the final seconds of the fight. That's what we've seen from Deontay before. And Deontay, having retired, has just come back. And I think he's got a kind of a warm-up fight lined up either this month or next. So, if you're looking at making money and you want a guaranteed knockout, Wardley versus Wilder would be crazy.
Do that at Portman Road, couldn't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, those tickets would sell like the proverbial hotcakes, wouldn't they, Stu? So there are a lot of options. I think the exciting thing for Fab is that he has essentially got the kind of pugilistic world at his feet now. He's got this event out of the way. He's won it in spectacular style. The knockout the clips of the knockout, the celebrations has gone viral. You know, it's everywhere. Everyone knows the name Fabio Wardley. He was trending on Twitter yesterday after the knockout, so it's elevated him even more. You say as well, Stu, he's strengthened the bond between the Ipswich fans, the fandom, the local people who came to support him, and him as to what he's done. He's won himself loads more fans as well from what's happened here. And I, you know, as I said to you in the aftermath, he shouldn't be doing this. This should not be happening. And we thought that, you know, the dream, he'd finally been exposed by Justis Huni, and then he finds his knockout punch. So who's to say, you know, that he can't go on and do more and eventually win a version of the world title?
I saw Frank Warren's eyes sort of lighting up in the post-match yesterday, and I think he made reference to sort of Ricky Hatton. And, you know, in his first few fights, he was only getting sort of handfuls, hundreds, and then the sort of the bond with Manchester City grew, and it got to the stage where, you know, what he was doing, the people that were following him over to the States in their many thousands towards the sort of the peak of his career. So I think he's probably seen a moment where a lot of people maybe went into Portman Road at the weekend with a fairly open mind, maybe have been sort of fairly sceptical, not even that interested, but thought, I should really be there as an event, maybe picked up a cheap last minute ticket, just see what it's all about. I would defy many to have come away from that not feeling a greater bond with Fabio, with boxing, that are now going to be very interested in, you know, following him and maybe going to watch him next. So that's very much mission accomplished and on that front. And yeah, we're going to be fascinated to see where he goes next. Ross, I saw your eyes light up when Mark talked about 44-year-old potential opponent next. You could have him, couldn't you? 44.
Well, he's way out. He's way past the Hall's cut-off, isn't he, Pulev? I mean, he's basically a
boxing.
Yeah. Should be in the retirement home.
Yeah, I think 30 in boxing's probably fine, but yeah, when you get over 40, that's probably that's my now boxing age is like over 40.
Yeah,
you got to be gone. Although, how old is Usyk? Is he?
He's up there. I think he's 39.
So he's fine. He's got one more year left in him.
Yeah. He'll be pleased to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, 44 and coming up against the foot, because I'm sure experience is great, but when you've got a 30-year-old like Fab going at you, you know, I'm not no expert, but got a bit more energy probably.
I think Pulev is definitely beatable from a Fab point of view. He's not nowhere near as fast as Huni. He can be hit, and we know obviously if Fabio Wardley hits you, you're going. So yeah, we'll see. That obviously Fab has to have some time off. He's about to be a dad, but it is exciting, as I say, because there's so many options for him. I think.
A historic day at Portman Road, a win at Portman Road. We haven't seen too many of those.
That's two this season.
Yeah, first of this calendar year, the first in 2025. Yeah. Nice to finally get one. Nice to have some positivity to discuss on this podcast for once. Yeah, we'll stay very much on the Fabio Wardley train going forwards. But the next time we speak to you, it'll be back to football. It'll be back to, dare I say it, Kieran McKenna and the transfer window and all the rest of it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we'll leave that one there. All I will say is Kieran McKenna walking into that stadium must have felt like an absolute king. In the middle, there was a boxing match going on in the middle of the ring, and as he took his seat, he was serenaded every time his face flashed up on the screen. He got his own song being sung. That must make you feel 12 foot tall and 10 foot tall. What's the saying? 100 foot tall.
However many foot tall you want to be.
Yeah, that must have made him feel pretty good, and that's got to count for something, hasn't it? I'm scratching around the edges of a potential managerial domino effect involving Brentford and whatnot at the moment. But we'll get stuck into that.
I can't believe you just didn't go and ask him, Stu. All bets were off on Saturday night. We could do whatever we wanted. Walk straight up to him.
Yeah, well, you could have asked Mr. Ashton when you spoke to him.
Oh, true, actually.
Guarantee?
Right back on me. Oh. I think Marcus might have shut that down had I done that.
Yeah, I think that is when the sniper in the stands would have been activated at that stage. But no, we'll get stuck into all that next time. But today was to bask in the glory of a Fabio Wardley win. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all on the other side.